Hey Wilson, how's it going?
Hey Farhan, how are you? I'm okay.
Good. Good, I'm doing well, thanks. How is the weather down in Bolivia?
Uh, it's something windy, windy.
Uh-huh.
How can I say?
Yeah,
Uh,
windy. Windy was right.
yeah, it's windy, so yeah, something cold.
Uh-huh. That's good. You guys are about to start the fall right now, start autumn in just a few days or in maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Here it's so ridiculously warm. It's 30 degrees Celsius right now.
Yeah,
In Wisconsin where I am. Uh, I didn't believe that September we could get this warm. I mean, this is very unusually hot. Um,
well,
my windows are open, my fan is on. It's very hot right now. Yeah.
uh, do you work as a software developer, right?
Yeah, software project manager actually. So I do a little bit of development, but my most work is management.
Ah, okay, you used to
Yeah,
program.
yeah. A little bit. I know a little bit. So
Ah, okay.
because my background is not really in the technical stuff. My background is more in the management world, but I learned a little bit, just enough to be able to communicate effectively.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And are there um, any opportunities to work in this cuisine as a programmer?
Yeah, there are lots of opportunities actually. Programmers actually probably have one of the best um, skills right now in the U.S. because even with a lot of these companies that are small to emerging companies, they're growing, especially in California, in the bigger cities like New York. Um, they have lots of startups. Lots of new companies are forming. Uh, Kind of like same thing with Colingo. Colingo is also a startup. It is a bunch of people got together. Some young guys got together and said, "Let's make a company. Let's hire some developers. Let's hire teachers. Let's hire some managers." So developers, yeah, they're doing very well, I think overall.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, otherwise I would learn more of this stuff. Maybe I should take classes and become a developer or at least learn some of the technical knowledge, you know.
I know some people from Argentina that are JavaScript developers, and I I am amazed with those guys because they're very focused with JavaScript,
Hmm.
and they are mm, related with many great developers from the USA.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the development community, even internationally, there's a lot of growth in that field, because technology is growing so quickly. Especially like some of my friends, they work for Microsoft. They design applications. So the applications on your phone, or for example, maybe the widgets, the small applications on your desktop for weather, finance, news, all those kinds of things. They do a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's not an easy job. Sometimes it's very difficult. There's long hours, lots of traveling sometimes, but they make really good money and they enjoy most of them enjoy their job. So it's fun to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's great, Wilson. I know that how often do you come on Colingo? Do you try to come every once in a while when you're free, or maybe do you take one class a day?
I try to attend 3 times per day.
Oh wow, okay.
And yeah, I try to take advantage of my time, for example, at lunchtime or when I am leaving the office, I try to enter 1 hour to Colingo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I think your English is very, very strong. And, based on the other students, um, a lot of them are getting much more comfortable with their vocabulary, with their conversation. I've only noticed maybe the last 6 weeks. Nothing major. A few students have been more regular in my classes, and yeah, you're doing very well. I think in terms of conversation, you understand everything. You speak very clearly. You always answer your questions, properly. So
Yeah, I used to ask every time when I was talking with mm, American people, and can you repeat, please? Can you repeat, please? Now I can understand at least 90% of my
that's
conversations.
That's really good. That's really good. Even, I mean, considering how varied people speak and how many, how different people's accents are, different parts of the country, 90% is really, really good. That's a very high number. With a little bit more practice, you'll be able to reach 100%. So, everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. I think we'll wait maybe just 2 more minutes. Sometimes I don't like waiting because I like to start the conversation and dive into the grammar and the lesson as well as the article, but I guess sometimes we have to wait. Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Any big plans this week? Anything cool going on in your hometown or?
I was reading an article about people-oriented, future-oriented people and past-oriented people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of article was it? Do you consider yourself a future-oriented person or a past-oriented person?
Well, oriented future people used to live alone, or I mean, they don't have friends. They hard work, and
Uh-huh.
they usually very focused with their goals. With their
Uh-huh.
goals. So, and yeah, maybe I
Yeah.
am. I am something like that.
Oh, I don't know. It's not bad to be a mix of both. Some people are maybe introverted. Introverted means, when you focus on your goals. When you don't, you're not extroverted. You're not social to a large extent. Maybe you have a few friends, but you don't go crazy with your social activities. Sometimes it's good to be both, honestly, because then you can get the good mix of
Yeah.
being focused as well as being social. If you're social all the time, you don't have time to be focused, I guess. So it's not as helpful. Anyway, while we were talking, Wilson and I were talking. A bunch of people joined the class. Yulisa and Emmy, welcome to class.
Hi, Farhan. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah, all the different possibilities, right?
Yes,
And we also have Saul. Is that how you pronounce your name, Saul, or is it Saul?
In English, it's so.
Saul in English, okay?
Yeah,
Where are you from, Saul?
I am from Nicaragua. You,
Nicaragua. Okay.
yeah, I am here practicing English.
Fantastic. Welcome to Colinga. Welcome to my class.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I haven't
Hi,
had
hi
any.
everyone. Hi everyone. Everyone.
Yeah,
Hi,
hi.
Saul.
I haven't had anybody from Nicaragua in my class yet, so this is actually really nice.
Uh,
Uh,
Actually, I think that I am the only one from Nicaragua because I have been in several classes,
uh-huh.
and all the students are from other countries.
I am
But
from
but
Nicaragua, so.
you're from Nicaragua. That's the first
Just
time
kidding. Just kidding.
uh, do you see? Do
No,
you see?
Wilson is from Bolivia, and Yulisa is from Peru, and Emmy is from Saudi Arabia, and I'm from the U.S. So you are my closest neighbor, Saul.
Why?
You are, I mean, in terms of all these countries, Nicaragua is the closest to the U.S., right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you're the closest. I think Emmy is the furthest. Saudi Arabia is very far, definitely.
Yes,
Hey, Gabriel, how's it going, man? He's from Brazil.
Hello,
Hey, Gabriel.
how is it going?
Good, good, good. Everything's good. Let's get started with class, guys. We're about 12 minutes in. So today we are going to be discussing the first conditional. Okay. So what do we mean when we say the first conditional? Well, the first conditional is used to talk about things that are possible or likely to happen in the future. Okay. So for example, you can say, if it's a very cloudy day outside, you can say, if it rains, I will stay inside, right? If it rains, I will stay inside. Or, for example, let's say you're talking to somebody and they are smoking, and in many places you're not allowed to smoke. So you can tell them, if you smoke inside the building, I will call the police, right? So these are examples of first conditional phrases, right? We talk about things that are possible or likely to happen in the future. And another thing to keep in mind about the first conditional is that we only use it for realistic scenarios, okay? Realistic scenarios. We don't use the first conditional to talk about, for example, wishes and desires that we would like to happen in the future. So you can't talk about, for example, if I go to the moon, I will, you know, jump around for fun. You know, I mean, whatever you want to say. We are only talking about realistic scenarios here. And the construction of the first conditional, the way you create the first conditional, is you have the word if plus the subject. So if I, if you, if Saul, if Gabriel, whatever. If plus the subject plus the simple present verb, which would be, you know, whatever. And then you can put a comma, and then you have another subject, and then the word will, and then the base form of a verb. Okay, so let me quickly copy this, and I'm going to paste it here so that you guys have it as a reference, right? If plus a subject plus the simple present, and then a comma, subject plus will, and then a base form of a verb. What does base form mean? A base form is a verb that has not been changed. So, for example, if I say, if it rains tomorrow, right? It is the subject, rains is the simple present, comma, if it rains tomorrow, comma, I will stay at home, right? So stay is the base form of the verb. I didn't change it. I didn't say stayed, will stay, staying, none of that. I'm just keeping the base form of the verb and not changing it from the base form, right? So let us use this as a template, as a foundation from which to practice the rest of our exercises. So Wilson, would you mind giving me an example of a first conditional phrase using anything you want, any verbs you want, any subject you want?
Okay. If I know English, I'll work with overseas people.
If I know English, I will work with overseas people, right? Or I will work with people overseas, right?
Okay.
I will work with people overseas. Fantastic, right? So what was your simple present verb in that example, Wilson?
No.
If I know English, right? Perfect. So know is your simple present. And what is your base form verb that you used?
The base form.
Yeah. So what was that second verb that you said in your
Okay.
sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Work.
Work. Fantastic, right? So we didn't change work to any other form. We kept work, right? So let's jump to Emmy, actually. Let me go to the other side of the class. So Emmy, would you be able to give me an example with anything you want, subject or verb, whatever you want, and make a first conditional phrase?
Okay. I think it's a visit. If I travel to Spain, I will visit historic palaces.
Mm-hmm. If I travel to Spain, I will visit historic palaces, right? Great job. What was your simple present verb in that example?
I think it's travel.
Uh-huh. Exactly. If I travel to Spain, right?
Yes,
And
it's
then
not
what?
visit, sorry.
And
It's
then
a
what's
travel.
your exactly, right? Because with I, you would say I travel, right? And then what would you say? What's the base form verb that you're using?
Uh, it's visit.
Visit, right? Because I will visit
I
historical
will visit.
palaces. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Fantastic. So great job. Yulisa, let's go to you. Give me another example just like these guys did. Anything you want, any subject, any verb.
Okay. If I practice my speaking, I will I will be more fluent.
Fantastic. If I practice my speaking, I will be more fluent, right? And what are the two verbs, Yulisa? What is the simple present in your example?
Practice and
Yes, right? So your base form verb was be. I will be more, if I practice my speaking, I will be more fluent, right? Perfect, perfect. Saul, let's go to you. Give me one more example of a first conditional, just like these guys did, using any subject and any verb.
Okay. If I if I earn money, I will buy a car.
If I earn money, I will buy a car, right? Fantastic.
Yeah.
And what are your two verbs, Saul?
Uh, Earn and buy.
Earn and buy. Fantastic, fantastic. Buy is the base form, and earn is the simple present. So I think you guys really get the idea of this. I think what we should do is just I'm going to quickly go over the other form of the first conditional, which is basically if we make it a negative, right? If we negate or if we make negative the first conditional, then we will say we are saying what we don't want to happen in the future, right? What is not possible in the future. And the only difference with that is instead of will, we use will not. That's the only difference, right? So for a negative scenario, if plus the subject plus a simple present plus, so comma, you can say comma there, and then the subject will not, and then the base form verb. So let us actually review, if you guys can remember, let us go back to the sentences that you just said, and let us make them negative. Let's practice making them negative. Let's start with you, Saul, because you were the last person.
Okay. If I earn money, I won't use the bus anymore.
If I earn money, I won't, what was it again?
I won't use the bus anymore.
I won't use the bus anymore. Fantastic, right? You can say I will not use the bus or I won't use the bus. Both of them are correct. Yulisa, let's go to you.
okay, if I
You can have fun with it. You can change other words around also. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as your first sentence.
okay, if I sing, they will not listen. I
If I
don't know.
sing, if I sing, for example, if I sing, people will not listen to me, right?
Uh-huh.
Or if I sing, people will leave me alone, or whatever. Or people will not stick around. Okay.
Yeah.
What does stick around mean? Do you guys know? Stick around?
To be with you, to be around you.
Yeah, exactly, right? To stick around means to be near somebody, to be with somebody, right? So, for example, you can tell your friends, "Hey, stick around for a little bit." You know, maybe you're busy with something, but your friend is waiting for you. Your friend is not sure how long should I wait for you. You know, you can say, "Hey, man, just stick around for a little bit. Just wait for maybe 5 minutes. I'll be done with my work and I I can hang out with you. I can go out with you, whatever. So stick around, right? Fantastic. If I sing, people will not stick around, right? I think that's really nice, actually. That's a really good example. Emmy, what about you? Let's make an example with the will not form.
Okay. Um, if I have a lots of money, I will not wear cheap clothes.
Mm-hmm. That's good. If I have lots of money, I will not wear cheap clothes, right? So you're going to be buying rich clothes and expensive stuff, Armani and
Yes.
all that stuff. I don't know. I don't know rich clothes. I'm not rich, so you can.
From Prada and Chanel.
Oh yeah, Prada, yeah. Girls know this stuff better than guys, I think. I think guys, boys, men don't know as much of this stuff. And Wilson, let's make one last sentence using the negative scenario.
Okay. I was thinking of if I waste my free time, I won't be able to get a good job in the future.
Fantastic. If I waste my free time, I will not be able to get a good job in the future, right? Or I will not be able to get a good job. In the future works perfectly fine, but you can also make it. You can also stop after that. I will not get a good job part. Both are perfectly fine. And that's really good, right? So you guys all did a great job on this. I think this lesson is maybe a little too easy. What I do want to say, though, there's one last thing about the first conditional, which is that this order that we said, for example, the order that we wrote was if plus a subject plus simple present, comma, subject plus will or will not, plus base form. This order can be reversed, and it's the same scenario. It's not going to make any problems with the first conditional. So, for example, Wilson could have easily said, if I won't get a good job in the future if I waste my free time, right? Same thing. We just took the second part of the sentence and put it in the beginning, and took the first part of the sentence and put it at the end, right? So that's the only change we did, and it's still 100% first conditional. So these were the three things we looked at, right? We looked at making the first conditional, making the negation of the first conditional, making it negative, and then switching the order. These are the three things. Do we have any questions on these guys, on these three concepts, on these three ideas?
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, Yulisa, go ahead.
This first conditional, do you use would in some cases, or it's always will?
That's a good question. According to my rules and the lesson plan, they are saying will. But honestly, like in Spanish, for example, right? When we use the conditional, we use the ia ending, like yo hablaría, like con mi amigo, right? So I would speak to my friend, right? That's considered conditional. I think in English, the first conditional, because I didn't see anything otherwise, I think it's better to use will just to be on the safe side. I think, yeah, I think would, that's such a good question, you know. Native speakers don't know these things sometimes, right? Quickly see if there's some resources on this. The first conditional, okay, so I actually see the difference here. The first conditional uses will, the second conditional uses would, right? And this is where I, Lisa, this might be a good thing to maybe refer to later. This website, grammarccc.comnet.edu. Not sure what country this is from. Maybe it's some university somewhere. Right at the second area, it's saying, the second big area, first, second, and third conditional. The first conditional is, if I have money, I will go to Japan. The second conditional, if I had enough money, I would go to Japan. So I guess it's not only is it the present, it's the past form of the verb, and it's would instead of will. So I think that is the difference that we were looking at, Julissa.
In the second. Okay.
Yeah, the second conditional, which I don't think I taught a class about the second conditional, honestly. I think I've only taught first conditional and third conditional here for Colingo. Maybe I just haven't been on one of those classes. But that was a great question. And I think this website is actually really good. It gives some overview of some of these topics. Any other questions, guys?
No.
Okay. Saul is good. Okay, I think I'm going to assume everybody else is okay, because I can't see any of you guys, so I'm going to assume that. Okay. Let us go to the article then, and today's article is actually very interesting. I like the article because it's a little bit more creative, and it's going to really test our creative minds, right? Because it's interesting, this article is talking about art, talking about design, but there are no photos or pictures in the article, unfortunately. So we have to use our imagination to understand what they're talking about. It could be a little difficult to understand some of the words, some of the vocabulary. So if that's the case, please let me know, and we can stop, and I can explain things that you guys don't understand. So this is the article. I'm going to paste the link right here. At the same time, I am going to screen share so that you guys can see my screen and hopefully be able to follow along. If you guys have problems opening the article, please let me know as well. I want to make sure you guys can all see it. So let's start screen sharing. Okay, fantastic. All right. Do we all have the link open?
I have.
Okay, Wilson's got it.
Two.
Okay, Emmy's got it. We're just waiting on Yulisa and Saul.
Yeah, I got it.
Lisa's got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic, Saul. Thanks. So, Huffington Post, great newspaper. I love this newspaper because a lot of the cultural topics are very interesting, and they are reported well in this newspaper. So, today we're talking about African design, right? Something maybe folks are not very familiar with, right? What is African design, and what can African design teach us? So, we'll start at the beginning. Africa remains a blank white spot on the International Designer's Map of the World, despite being the second largest continent with the second largest population. 100 years ago, African culture, with its ceremonial masks and sculptures inspiring abstract art, radically changed Western art. Could Africa now do the same for design? To get a sense of African design today and its future potential, we invited creative professionals to share their experiences, observations, and thoughts on this challenging topic. The continent's culture is remarkably different from that of the other 7. The collective is more important than the individual, and the individual does not exist outside the collective. When a Dogonese, this is Dogonese is a tribe, I believe, a group of people in Africa. When a Dogonese comes in from the savannah, the standard greeting is, "I see you," to which he answers, "I am here." Essentially, he is being brought back into existence in that moment. The culture has a low power distance and is more comfortable with ambiguity than most others. This fertilizes the ground with an amazing amount of creativity. Most, if not all, of African designs have their roots in spiritualism. The customs and traditions driving the designs are closely tied to the living and breathing souls in their chiefs or tribal heads. Art and design are both first and foremost communal in nature. So whether you look at sculptures or fabrics, most of the designs were made to be enjoyed by the whole community, and design was to enhance the social life of the tribe, from the layout of the huts in a homestead to the war masks used in ceremonial dances. African design is found in one primitivism and is considered with raw form, childlike lines and references to wildlife, earthly hues and the color orange. African designers have the ability to translate reality into more abstract and expressive forms and to decorate and create amazing patterns, readily observable in their fabrics, ceramics, baskets, and masks. Due to resource, infrastructure, and financial constraints, the hallmarks of African design are simplicity, practicality, and ruggedness. Though legal and quality requirements are less stringent, this does not translate into cheap, unreliable products. Products that make it in Africa have to stand up against the elements, be user-friendly, and make common sense. This can be both good and bad, as sometimes aesthetics can be left behind for the sake of cost. Since African countries are in the early process of industrialization, contemporary design is still in its infancy. However, great design is visible in architecture and art as well as fashion, and African design is now being influenced by other global styles or themes from the Americas, Asia, and Europe. The true beauty of African design lies in how it takes a complex concept like spiritualism and condenses it into a generic symbol without losing the intent. That, to me, is the holy grail of design. If one can marry all the aforementioned values, create a good-looking product, produce it economically, and if the end result is exceptionally tough, easy to use, and something that people actually love to use, then that is quintessential African design. Right? So, interesting article, guys. Interesting article. Something different for me because I usually don't discuss cultural and art topics, right? But what do we think about this? This author was talking about different elements, different characteristics of African design that he thinks are very beautiful and are very creative. What do we think about this? Let's start with Saul, actually.
I don't know what to say, teacher.
I know it's a longer article, right? It's kind of complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you let me think a little bit.
It definitely did, right? So it helps us think. It helps us understand what is African design, right? So let me actually, since I was able to screen share a little while ago, I'm going to screen share again, guys, and I want to show you some Google images. Can you guys see these images on my screen?
Yes.
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 So see, these are all examples of African design, right? We talked about masks, right? So take a look at these masks. These masks are ceremonial. They have lots of colors. Some of them might be war masks that they wore when they went to battle, right? So you see, for example, this is a giraffe mask, right? These are all different. This is a zebra, influenced by animals, influenced by what they see in their nature, in their natural environment, different colors, all sorts of different designs, right? You have this kind of design, you have the longer face design, war masks, animals, once again we see lots of animals, right? And I think it's actually even more fascinating if we consider, for example, African dress. I actually really love African dress because look how colorful this is. Like, look at this guy's shirt, right? It blends. We read in the article that they love to use orange. We see orange in these children's clothing, as well as here we see orange. And women, you know, they have large head covers, very large and flowing garments, right? Once again, orange, yellow, 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 right? All sorts of different kinds of designs, right? What do you guys think about this? Wilson, what does this, how do you think about this? How does this make you react to African design?
Well, I like that style. It's very colorful, and its roots are from from their culture, and also are very influenced by the nature, by animals. So I like it. In my country also there are some mm, some jewelry, clothes that use this kind of style, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's very unique. You know, it's not something that you can see every day. So that's the reason why I think it's very very nice.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very unique. I like the fact that you mentioned that it's unique because I think none of us are from Africa in this class, right? Yet, I think when we look at African design, we see elements of things that are very rich, very creative, right? So, like we said, nature, colors, animals, right? Things like that. Yulisa, what's your reaction to this article and to some of those photos that we saw?
Uh, well, I think it's very interesting how they connect their designs with their beliefs, their spiritualism,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and also I think in the reading it says that all of these designs are not only made for one people. It has like a sharing. It's like a sharing for the whole community. It has a
Yeah.
meaning for the community.
It's a communal activity, right? So community, communal, they mean the exact same thing. That's a great observation, Lisa. Really makes African art different is the fact that it's communal, right? How's that different from, for example, the art that you're used to, or maybe other kinds of art, Lisa?
Well, I think the clothes that we see now are made mostly uh, for each person, more individualized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't have a sense of this is for a group of people, for our community. No, it's for each one to dress or to have their own style.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, what is the view? How does Western civilization, for example, how do we view art? Do we view art when we go to a museum and you look at a painting? Oh, this painting was done by, Van Gogh, or it was done by Monet, or whatever, right? I mean, it's something that you admire. It's very kind of limited to what you see within frames, what you see within someone's perspective, right? With African art, it seems like the boundaries are really there may not be any boundaries, right? It's very open, it's very connected to the earth, it's very connected to their people, their way of life, their community, right? All of these different things. Even, for example, the masks that we see, war masks versus maybe wedding masks. If you go to modern art museums in any major city, in their African section, they will probably have masks, right? And those masks don't really fit the museum framework, right? I mean, they're something that you wear. They're not something that you observe necessarily, right? You can observe a painting for 2 hours, but after a while, a mask will probably get boring, right? So you have to experience African art almost. It's not something that you can just observe. Uh, anyway, that's what I think. I've been talking too much. Uh, Gabrielle, what do you think about African art, my friend? What do you think about some of the pictures we saw about maybe, I know Brazil has African influence. Maybe you have some background on African art in your country.
Yes, I'm an admirer. How can you pronounce that?
Admirer, yeah, admirer.
Admirer. Yes,
Uh-huh.
of African culture and design and their expressions in art, in music. Uh, anyway, I'm a great admirer of them. But about design, I'm a designer, by the way. But I have a different conception of design, because design for me in my work is like a product, not a. It's different to art. You know, art is something different. It's only expression. I think this article talks about art, African art, and about it. For me, it's great. A lot of colors, and they have a great link with spiritualism, and I'm an admirer to of spiritualism too. I, I try to talk a lot, but uh, my expressions in English are not very good yet.
No, that's completely fine, Gabriel. I mean, I think one of the things that's interesting is, can you give an example of maybe how Brazilian culture has been affected by African art? Maybe just one example.
Uh, Man, a lot. Do you know favelas, right?
Mm-hmm.
The population in favelas is in the most of African descendants.
African descent, African descent.
Yes, and they have a very rich culture expression. Uh, if you see like samba, samba is completely influenced of African culture, and they mixed it here in Brazil. And have you heard about capoeira? This is a martial art.
Yeah, yeah.
It's from Africa too. A lot of dishes here in Brazil. Have you heard about feijoada?
No.
This is a dish of food that the nigger. Can you say nigger?
No, you don't. You want to say black people or African people. Yeah.
Okay, it's better.
Yeah. That's actually a very bad word, Gabrielle. Very bad word. Like if you said that here, people would fight you, and so you don't want to.
Really? Because I heard it a lot in rap music, and rap music is made by black people.
Rap music is a different world, man. It's not.
Yo, nigga.
It's not proper English, man. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that was a big mistake. But
no worries. Now you know. Now you know.
Okay, I'll go to the job. But you know, the African culture is completely here in Brazil. We are all the same thing.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. And Emmy, what's your take on the article? Anything that you found that was interesting about African design, African art?
Okay, I think they are so proud about their culture,
Mm-hmm.
and they are not embarrassed at all about their culture. They spread it around the world, especially in the United States. It's not also just culture, it's their beliefs, because they didn't just design this in no, it's like Ulysses said, it's something about beliefs and spirit, that it's they believe that some masks and some colors are have spiritism, I think it's the word.
Or you can say some of the masks or colors have spiritual value, or you can say
Yes.
they are part of spiritualism, right?
Yes. Actually, they are. We must take them as an example for us to spread our culture, thoughts, our beliefs like them, because yes, we don't know, and all of their culture are not changed among all the words. Maybe some international brands take from them a lot of something colors or their hats, strange hats, and mix it with their brands, but they don't change. But the African, they do not change their culture at all. And a lot of American citizens, they take um, a lot of beliefs from them, and they know when they buy or wear some masks or some something from their culture, they just not only for furniture or to hang it. No, they believe as they told them that it has spirit, and it's give good luck, for example, for this to do it. So I'm so uh, not impressed. It's um, something like that.
Impressed is good. I thought you were going to say impressed actually.
Yes, it's impressed. Yes. I mix impressed with embarrassed. Yes, impressed.
Yeah, you were impressed
Uh,
by African art, right? By what they do.
yes, because they have an idea, and they they spread it to our cultures without change it.
Yeah. So they retained the identity of their art, right? They retained they kept the essence of their art, and even though it spread, they kept the most important part of the art for themselves. They didn't allow the foreign art to corrupt their, the traditional essence of the art that they were making, I guess.
Yes.
Which is actually really cool, right? Because, for example, my culture, like in Indian culture, we have a lot of really, really nice art, but a lot of it's also getting influenced by Western themes. It's getting exported, and now there are new fusion technology, fusion fashion, I should say, fusion fashion, right? So when you have a fusion of fashions, you are fashions from different parts of the world together, making new things, which is beautiful. Maybe African culture is also doing this, but definitely not as much maybe as other cultures. So
Yes, because it's touch their beliefs. I think it's not just an art for them.
yeah, it's more of a spiritual thing. It's more of a faith thing. Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. So, Saul, I have a question for you. We're going to ask a little bit of the detailed questions. One of the things that the article was saying was economic advancement, right? So the author said, for example, that a lot of the African countries are still in the early process of industrialization. As a result, maybe the rest of the world has not seen as much of African art as people in Africa, right? Do you think economic advancement can actually indicate or can help other cultures see design and art, or is that something that doesn't matter? Economic advancement.
Do you know? Do you mean about economic in for African countries or for United
For
States?
African countries, right? So, is the fact that African a lot of the African countries are not at that economic advanced status of economic stability, does that impact how other cultures see their art? Is their art maybe more hidden because these countries are not as globalized? What do you think, Saul?
Mm, um, well, technology can help to spread the culture of Africa. The problem is the technology also can hurt the culture because the young people is very influenced about other culture, for example, the hip hop or pop music,
Mm-hmm.
and the child going to losing his identity
Yeah.
because then they like the other music and the other style of cloth, and it can help, but it's a little danger in that aspect, I think.
Hmm. Because with
And
the with increased globalization, I guess what you see is other ideas maybe diffuse their ideas into a culture, for example, right? But maybe
yeah,
because African culture is still isolated to a certain degree, we have not been able to see as much of this design outside of Africa. Maybe limited amounts, but not as much as, for example, American design or Western design, European design, right?
yes, because if if you see in another country, all the people want to use clothes of a brand Nike, for example,
Hmm.
or Ralph Lauren, and something like that. So if you want to spread your culture with technology, I guess you first need to teach your children and not to lose his culture and keep with that culture, even if they know another another cultures, I think.
Even if they know another culture, yeah. So really maintaining that identity, right?
That exactly identity. Keep the identity of your culture.
Exactly. Keeping identity is very, very important. Awesome, Saul. Thank you so much. Wilson, what do you think about this? Do you think economic advancement, maybe the position of Africa in the world today, does this impact how popular, the level of popularity of African art? Maybe people don't know about it because these countries are not global countries. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the globalization can affect to countries or peoples that are not prepared for it. Um, but nowadays, internet is a revolutionary thing, and it is more accessible for people nowadays. So I think in the future, the gap that is happening with within in this kind of problem will be sorted out, I think.
So these borders that we are looking at, these artificial borders are going to fall because of the internet, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a as I said, a revolutionary thing
Mm.
that connects many countries, many peoples in a real time, and yeah, the
Like
future is
here now,
bright. Mhm.
Say that again, Gabriel. I'm sorry.
like here now, a lot of people from different countries
Exactly,
talking with the
right?
same. Yeah.
Just like in Colingo, right? So yeah, very, very similar idea. What about you, Ulisa? What do you think about globalization, progress? How does this affect design, art, all of this stuff?
Mm,
Does it matter? Does it not matter? Maybe.
no, yeah, I think it matters
Uh,
because how can you come up with a unique design like these ones when you have such a big competition from all I don't not only the Western the styles of clothes, but from other sides. So you want to make something unique, but at the same time, uh, they have to compete with with other styles or designs.
other designs, fashions, styles, exactly, exactly, right? And even just the art itself, right? I mean, maybe because African populations are, you know, they treat this art as spiritual, and they treat these art forms as spiritual art forms. Maybe because of that, maybe that's another barrier, right? Because African spirituality is really African, right? Maybe couple of places in the world, like maybe in the Caribbean, maybe in Brazil, maybe in the United States, maybe these areas have that African influence in the art and in the culture. But in the rest of the world, we don't really have African spirituality that much, right? Maybe that's another reason that we don't see this art, because the art is dependent on spirituality, right? Maybe, I don't know. What do you think about that, Lisa?
Yeah, and I was wondering if these designs, these clothes or clothing,
Mm-hmm.
are made
Clothing,
on clothing are made only for the African communities, or it can also be bought by other people, because it has a meaning, I think, these clothes.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I honestly, I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 times in my life African people wearing those traditional African clothing. Um, I have never seen a non-African person wear some of those clothes that that I showed on my screen. Maybe because it just hasn't reached that level of globalization. You know, I mean, like I know like white girls who wear Indian clothes. Like
Yeah.
I've been to parties before, and the white girls were wearing Indian clothes, and they wore it very well. I mean, I could not tell the difference between the Indian design and what they were wearing, because they did a very good job. With African clothing, I never really saw that with other people's wearing African clothing. You know. How about you guys? I mean, Gabrielle, what's the situation in Brazil? Do you see African Brazilians or Afro Brazilians? Do they wear their traditional clothing, or do they wear just normal Brazilian clothing?
Yes, he results very mixed. Uh, I have a friend of mine that he is Swiss. You know Swiss?
Yeah, he's from Switzerland.
Yes, exactly.
Uh,
And he plays. Have you heard about maracatu? It's like a kind of music that has a strong influence from Africa too. And
mhm.
he plays like a, how do you say that thing that you beat?
Drum.
Yes, drum, a
Mhm.
kind of drum. And he dress only African clothing style, you know. And if you go to favela, like in Sundays, they usually organize a samba. Uh, I don't know how to say in English, but they organize some parties to play samba, and you
Mhm.
can find a lot of blonde people, white people dressing African style clothes. It's
Mhm.
more common than in the United States, I think, because
Definitely.
here in Brazil it's a mix. Uh, Anyway, you find a white man with blue eyes, and in the other corner you see African people, people from Angola, people from I don't know United States, from Europe. It's really mixed here.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely, and I think that's really cool. You know. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Yulisa, thanks for bringing that up as well. Indian clothing and accessories are popular in South America, popular in Peru because of Bollywood movies. Everybody loves Bollywood, you know? I mean, I was very surprised when I travel, people know Bollywood. They look at me and they say, "Hey, Bollywood," you know?
Can you dance?
I don't know anything besides like the normal. I mean, I can speak the language, but I don't really dance or do any of the cultural things. But they really enjoy talking to Indian people and saying, for example, Shah Rukh Khan is one of the most
Well
popular
known.
actors. Yeah, so they see me, hey, Shah Rukh Khan. No, I'm not. You know, so so it's very funny actually. Emmy, what's your take? Well, we will end class with you, Emmy, about just the idea that globalization and societies, how does that globalization process affect how international design becomes, or African design? The fact that a lot of people may not know about it. Do you think globalization is a reason, or economy is a reason?
Hmm. Okay, until now I didn't understand the question clearly.
Sure,
Uh,
I can repeat it again.
okay.
So, do you think, for example, the if a country or like African countries, they're not as globalized as China, United States, India,
Yes.
whatever, right? Do you think the result of that, the reason that maybe African design is not as well known is because of this lack of globalization? Because there
Yes.
is.
Yes, I think that is the reason because they don't have a lot of artisan advertisements things. They
Mhm.
don't have a lot of money to do this. Uh, if they have chance and they have money, I think they will improve their styles. I am sure about that because they believe in their thoughts and. If actually, I think in United States you don't see a lot of African because it's I think it's because the African black um people there uh, they have problems from a long years ago, so they don't um, they don't wanna be stick with their culture, so they want to go move out with the people, with the citizen, with the rules, and okay, they don't wanna be um, special or not special. They don't wanna be strange from the other people. But here in Middle East, no, there are a lot of people from Africa, and they wear until now their uh, the same colors. I saw it, the same clothes in the weddings, in ceremonies. A lot of that. They are they proud to wear it,
Mhm.
and I think just in the United States, it's because a lot of problems happen there for them. But in a lot of countries, as I heard, it's okay.
Mhm.
You can see it a lot.
Mhm.
Um,
I think that's a very valid point. In the United States, just in terms of my personal perspective, the reason why African culture is really not visible here, it's visible among the African people who come to the United States from Africa. So let's say Nigerian, somebody from Nigeria, somebody from Ghana, somebody from Senegal. They come to America, of course, they are Senegalese Americans, they are Nigerian Americans, right? They retain their culture. They retain their culture. And for example, I have been to some ceremonies. The Nigerian women, they wear these beautiful, like really large headscarves. They wear these flowing garments, like bright orange, bright green, right? But the normal African American people, the people I would say, black people in America, average black people in America, African American people in America, they don't really have any idea of their African heritage because, I mean, it's the history of how they came to the U.S., right? Their ancestors came as slaves. So
yes,
that culture was stamped out. I mean, maybe that first generation of slaves in
yes,
300 years ago, maybe they knew, okay, I'm from this culture, I'm from this tribe, I'm from this nationality. But today, I mean, 300 years later, nobody knows. Not
yes.
so,
When you
yeah.
saw movies, you saw a lot of movies about black people. The grandmothers wear the same style and talk like that, and she put some masks, I think. But the grands and the children are so im, uh, embarrassing if their friend saw that.
hmm
Yes,
They
I
they
think
would be embarrassed if their friends saw
yes,
that, right?
embarrassed.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yes, they will be embarrassed if their children saw that and laughing um, to their grandmothers, I think.
hmm Yeah,
That's the
it's
idea. They don't want to be they don't want to wear this or stick with this style.
Yeah, it's a generational thing. Honestly, it's a big generational thing. Even among Indian people in this country, I will address your comment, Wilson. It's a very good comment. Just a sec. Um, Even Indian people in America, for example, like my sister, she enjoys wearing Indian clothes, maybe for a wedding, maybe for a ceremony, but she doesn't generally wear Indian clothing when she leaves the house, right? In India, Indian girls wear Indian clothing all the time, right? Or they wear it much more frequently than in the U.S. My mom, she still wears, most of the time, she still wears Indian clothing. Even when she goes outside, maybe she wears half American, half Indian, something like that. Or a Western-style Indian dress, right? So it's really a generational thing. My grandmother never wore jeans, never wore like a dress, like a Western style dress. She always wore Indian clothing, right? So with each generation, it's getting more and more globalized, more and more this fusion of fashion. And Wilson, to address your question, I think so. This is just something that happens in English only, right? So Hindu is actually the religion in English, right? So if we say, for example, somebody is a Hindu, then that is a religious connotation. That's a religious label that you can give somebody, right? Somebody is Christian, somebody is Catholic, somebody is Muslim, somebody is Hindu, right? So this actually gets a little confusing because Hindu is the religion in English. Somebody who is a follower of a Hinduism is a Hindu, right? So Hinduism is the religion, and Hindu is the person, right? Hindi is the language. So the main language in India, actually, it's not the main language. One of the most popular, one of the most spoken languages in India is Hindi. So Hindi is the language, is the religion. So the actual person, the individual is a Hindu. So you can have a Hindu person who speaks Hindi, right? Or you can have a Muslim person who speaks Hindi. For example, I speak Hindi but I'm not Hindu, right? I'm Muslim, but I speak Hindi. So that's interesting because it's very confusing. It's very confusing. I don't know in Spanish how people say Hindu, maybe Hindu, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
And when they sell movies, they call them Hindu movies,
yeah,
not Indian or Bollywood. No.
Bollywood. Yeah, I mean it's the same stuff, honestly. But if we want to make a differentiation, the differentiation is Hindu versus Hindi, just the language versus the religion. So that's what's interesting about it. So
So then, to refer to people from India, I can call Indian people, right?
absolutely, that's the safest. An
Okay.
somebody from India is an Indian.
The
Right.
safest.
Yeah, that is the safest, right? Because sometimes, depends on the situation, you might offend somebody if you say Hindu to them, right? Because India has many hundreds of millions of Muslims, and India has many millions of other religions, right? People who are not Hindu, but they speak Hindi, right? So
Okay.
that's why it's confusing, and it's very, very common for somebody who is not Indian. It's very, very common to make that mistake. The only reason I know as well is because I'm from India. That's my culture. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it's very fascinating. I mean, Hindi. I mean, we were all Hindus. Okay, India was all Hindus and Buddhist people until maybe the 10th century when Muslims came from Turkey and Iran and they invaded India, and a lot of the Hindu people became Muslim. So my ancestors were all Hindu. Maybe 500 years ago, 600 years ago, somebody in my family, God knows who, became a Muslim, and that's when the situation changed. But we were all Hindus once upon a time, or Buddhists.
Okay.
Those are
Got
the ancient religions. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? I know it's been we talked a little bit longer, but anything about globalization, design, first conditional? It seems like we talked about first conditional days ago, but
Yeah.
we did mention first conditional once upon a time. Saul, did you have any questions, man? You were kind of quiet. Maybe I spoke too much.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, Wilson and Saul, you guys are both okay?
They are
Yeah,
slept.
teacher, I learned a lot.
Nice, nice. Okay, sounds good. No questions from Emmy or Gabrielle. Gabrielle, what are you? Are you just like reading a newspaper, man? What are you doing right now? You're just like just
No,
relaxing.
I'm here.
He's listening rap music.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to that Tupac. That's what you're doing right now.
I like Tupac. And sorry for the term that I used because I didn't know that it was
No worries,
some
man.
kind
No
of
worries.
bad word.
It's
But it's really confusing. Like
yeah.
people who are not black can't say it.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I
make sense for me.
you can say it if you want to get like beat up. You know, if you want to start a fight, you can say it, right?
Oh
You know?
man, that's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, it's a big cultural thing in America. Like you see it in movies, you see it in rap music, you see it in everything. This comes up in common language, but it's still one of the worst words in English language. Like, for example, you will never hear it on TV, like in a news report, or I mean, people have lost their jobs for saying that word. You know, like official people. You know.
But so Wikipedia, I don't know how you call it.
Yeah. Wikipedia, yeah.
Because there is a little text that I copied here.
Yeah, I saw that too. And they said, for example, in addition to African
Recently, there was
Americans,
used more liberally among younger members of all races and ethnics in the United States. So
that's true. You know, young people
yeah.
do say it, right? Because I mean, they're influenced by pop music. They're influenced by all of the culture that's around them all the time, right? But even then, like, it really depends on the situation. Like, you want to be careful with this word because maybe, for example, if your friend knows you well, then you know people might be comfortable using that word. But generally, it's something that we avoid all the time because you know it's very derogatory. Actually, it's derogatory means right. It is something that is very insulting because this word was historically used actually by the people who enslaved the black people. So, for example, the white masters, the white people who owned the slaves, used to call their slaves that name, right? So, a recent movie in America, maybe you heard of this movie, Django Unchained, Jamie Foxx.
I saw it.
Yeah, you saw it, right? That movie makes so many. That movie has this word so many times. Like every other sentence has this word almost, right? And people were very upset. Some people were very upset. Like, how did this movie get released when there were so many mentions of the N word? In English, we call it the N word. We don't even say the full thing, you know. So it's a very I mean, that movie had Jamie Foxx, so Jamie Foxx is black, right? But it had Leonardo DiCaprio, it had other people, you know, white actors who were using that word. And some people were very offended. I mean, some people said this is not right.
And it's crazy because for us here in Brazil, we really see that movie and we appreciate American movies. And for us, when you see the word, because we see with subtitles. And for us, we hear, we listen to the words, and for us, it's really common, you know. It's like normal. And when I saw your reaction, I was surprised.
No, that's the thing. It's something that is misunderstood because it's common enough for people to think that it's okay to say it, right? But in reality, it's one of those kind of hidden words that everybody knows what it means, okay? Everybody knows what it means, but nobody says it.
Okay,
It's
got
one of
it.
those things. It's one of those things. Like it's some black people use it within their communities to talk to each other, but if you are not black and if you generally want to just respect respect the fact that this word used to be a very bad word historically
Mhm.
and still is bad, then we should avoid using it. But that's the only thing.
Okay, got it. I will not use it anymore.
No worries, man.
Okay,
No worries.
my advice, Gabriel, don't sign this movie around black people.
Don't what?
Sign,
Sign?
sing. Don't sing these songs around black people.
Okay. Thank you
For
for your advice.
for example, the rap songs and stuff. Yeah, I mean, if it's in a song, I think people will understand, but you still should be cautious. I mean,
Okay.
this is in the U.S. In the U.S., you should be cautious. I don't know about other societies, but in the U.S., it's something that we.
Yeah, I think in Brazil, I
Only
think it's
United
not a
States.
problem.
Yeah, right. Watch out. Exactly. Just like Wilson's saying, man. Gotta watch out. Right. Anyway, guys, fantastic talking to all of you. I have another class at this time tomorrow. You guys are all welcome to join. Any remaining questions about anything? We started with first conditional, and we end with, you know, this word in English. I mean, we've gone a very long distance, but
I even don't remember what it is.
first conditional.
Yeah, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Okay, good, because otherwise I would have to review it again. Yeah. All right. Sounds good, guys. Well, have a great rest of the night or day, everybody, except for Emmy. It's night, but Emmy, it's day. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Alrighty.
you, Farhan.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone.
Thank you,
See
Take
you
care.
Farhan.
later.
Good night.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Take care.
You.
Uh-huh. That's good. You guys are about to start the fall right now. Start autumn in just a few days or in maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, it's so ridiculously warm. It's 30 degrees Celsius right now.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin where I am. I didn't believe that September we could get this warm. I mean, this is very unusually hot. Um,
Well,
my windows are open, my fan is on. It's very hot right now. Yeah.
do you work as a software developer, right?
Yeah, software project manager actually. So I do a little bit of development, but my most work is management.
Ah, okay. You used
Yeah,
to program.
yeah, a little bit. I know a little bit. So
Ah, okay.
because my background is not really in the technical stuff. My background is more in the management world. But I learned a little bit, just enough to be able to communicate effectively.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And are there um, any opportunities to work in Wisconsin as a programmer?
Yeah, there are lots of opportunities actually. Programmers actually probably have one of the best um, skills right now in the U.S. because even with a lot of these companies that are small to emerging companies, they're growing, especially in California, in the bigger cities like New York. Um, they have lots of startups. Lots of new companies are forming. Uh, Kind of like same thing with Colingo. Colingo is also a startup. It is a bunch of people got together. Some young guys got together and said, "Let's make a company."
Try to attend 3 times per day.
Oh wow, okay.
And yeah, I try to take advantage of my time, for example, at lunchtime or when I am leaving the office, I try to enter 1 hour to Colingo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I think your English is very, very strong, and based on the other students, um, a lot of them are getting much more comfortable with their vocabulary, with their conversation. I've only noticed maybe the last 6 weeks. Nothing major. a few students have been more regular in my classes, and yeah, you're doing very well. I think in terms of conversation, you understand everything. You speak very clearly. You always answer your questions, properly. So
Yeah, I used to ask every time when I was talking with mm, American people, and can you repeat, please? Can you repeat, please? Now I can understand at least 90% of my
that's
conversations.
that's really good. That's really good. Even I mean, considering how varied people speak and how many how different people's accents are, different parts of the country. 90% is really, really good. That's a very high number. With a little bit more practice, you'll be able to reach 100%. So, everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. I think we'll wait maybe just 2 more minutes. Sometimes I don't like waiting because I like to start the conversation and dive into the grammar and the lesson as well as the article, but I guess sometimes we have to wait. Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Any big plans this week? Anything cool going on in your hometown or?
You know, I was reading an article about people-oriented, future-oriented people and past-oriented people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What kind of article was it? Do you consider yourself a future-oriented person or a past-oriented person?
Well, oriented future people used to live alone, or I mean, they don't have friends. They hard work, and
Uh-huh.
they usually very focused with their goals.
Uh-huh.
So, and yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I am something like that.
Oh, I don't know. It's not bad to be a mix of both. Some people are maybe introverted. Introverted means, when you focus on your goals. When you don't, you're not extroverted. You're not social to a large extent. Maybe you have a few friends, but you don't go crazy with your social activities. Sometimes it's good to be both, honestly, because then you can get the good mix of
Yeah.
being focused as well as being social. If you're social all the time, you don't have time to be focused, I guess. So it's not as helpful. Anyway, while we were talking, Wilson and I were talking. A bunch of people joined the class. You, Lisa, and Emmy, welcome to class.
Hi, Farhan. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah, all the different possibilities, right?
Yes,
And we also have Saul. Is that how you pronounce your name, Saul, or is it Saul?
In English, it's so.
Saul in English, okay?
Yeah.
Where are you from, Saul? Hey, Wilson, how's it going?
Hey Farhan, how are you? I'm okay.
Good. Good, I'm doing well, thanks. How's the weather down in Bolivia?
Uh, it's something windy, windy.
Uh-huh.
How can I say?
Yeah,
Uh,
windy. Windy was right.
yeah, it's windy, so yeah, something cold.
Company, let's hire some developers, let's hire teachers, let's hire some managers. So developers, yeah, they're doing very well, I think overall.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, otherwise I would learn more of this stuff. Maybe I should take classes and become a developer or at least learn some of the technical knowledge, you know.
I know some people from Argentina that are JavaScript developers, and I I am amazed with those guys because they are very focused with JavaScript,
Hmm.
and they are mm, related with many great developers from the USA.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the development community, even internationally, there's a lot of growth in that field, because technology is growing so quickly. Especially like some of my friends, they work for Microsoft. They design applications. So the applications on your phone, or for example, maybe the widgets, the small applications on your desktop for weather, finance, news, all those kinds of things. They do a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's not an easy job. Sometimes it's very difficult. There's long hours, lots of traveling sometimes, but they make really good money and they enjoy most of them enjoy their job. So it's fun to
Mm,
see that. Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's great, Wilson. I know that how often do you come on Colingo? Do you try to come every once in a while when you're free, or maybe do you take one class a day?
I